Hi, this is Brandon Moon with Moonlit Fly Fishing. I want to welcome you to Fly Tying Night tonight. Tonight we're going to tie up the Purple Haze pattern. This is the pattern that I have had the greatest success with when dry fly fishing. I live in cutthroat country, and I promise you cutthroat absolutely love these, but I've caught a plethora of brook trout and rainbows with them as well. I don't really have a lot of browns that I fish for, but I fish for a lot of those three species. Traditionally, this is tied with like a Spanflex body. I like to use the biot body, so I'm going to show you how I tie this up, and I hope you enjoy it. Again, this is probably my most productive dry fly tied in a variety of sizes. So before we do that, I do want to invite you to like your favorite video, leave us a comment, ask us a question, or say hi, or just let us know that you're liking the videos or whatever, so that we can interact with you and engage with you and help build a strong community. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to receive future notifications as well. For this hook, we're going to be tying on a Moonlit ML052. I'm tying it in a size 14. This is my go-to size. This pattern can be tied anywhere from like a size 10 if you wanted to tie a big one, all the way to like a size 20. This is going to imitate any kind of mayfly. It's an attractor type pattern, so have a lot of fun with it in a bunch of different sizes. Go ahead and put our hook in the vise here. Okay. I'm using, for this, I use two different colors of thread. Tonight I'm using a violet. This is a 12-aught classic wax. I also use a purple in this thread. Sometimes I like the violet just because it adds a little bit different color in my butt on this fly, which sometimes seems to work really well. So I'm going to start this thread at about the 3/4 mark, and this is just where I'm going to tie in my post. Okay, I'm going to tie this tag end of thread, and I'm going to leave it on, but I'm going to wrap it back to the bend of the hook, and then I'm just going to come forward. And that's just so I can get it out of the way. For my post, you can use poly yarn. This is the Semperfli high float fibers. We've got some of this left. It's discontinued. If there isn't any more of this, the poly yarn works great. But this is the light done, and I've doubled it up. So I have two pieces for the size 14. If I'm tying a 16 or smaller, I go with just one strand. So I'm going to lay that straight across my hook, and I'm just going to give a couple wraps securing that down. Got that a little too far forward, so I can adjust that if I pull that up, and then I can cinch it down. There you can see I've got good proportions. Couple wraps in front, couple wraps behind. Now I'm just going to take and wrap this post up. I can't pull this tight unless I'm pulling and holding the tip of that. Otherwise my thread's going to pull right off of that post. I'm just going to have touching wraps going up this post just a little ways. I don't actually want the post to be too tall. It doesn't require a whole lot of wraps of thread. Okay, now I just lock that when I'm done by going around the hook shank, and that's going to lock all of this in place. Now I'm just going to wrap back here to the back at my tie-in point. Now I'm going to tie in my tail. For my tail on this pattern, I actually like to use microfibbits. This is like the rust orange color. This is the hen's microfibbits, and I want 4 fibers. I'm just gonna count these out. I want to keep the tips nice and even. Okay, so now I've got my 4 fibers of microfibbits right there. I'm going to measure these out. I actually want them to be just a smidge longer than the hook shank. If I'm going to err on the side of caution, I'm going to err on the side of being too long. I want these to sit right on top of the hook shank. Okay, we'll go ahead and trim those out. Okay, now I'm just going to take my thumb. I'm going to separate those fibers. Okay, so I push those up with my thumb. Now I take that tag end and pull that through. The tighter I pull that, the more that's going to pull that tail up. And I'm just going to secure that down. Now I'll trim out my tag end of thread. And that tag end is going to help separate that tail nicely. Now I'll just go back here to the back of my hook, and I'm going to give this 2 wraps underneath the tail. That's going to make sure my tail is nice and vertical. My thread kind of got a little fuzzies there. Now I'm going to actually kind of help that tail just a little bit more by going underneath. And that's just gonna splay my tail out in a nice V. I can pull these with my fingers just a little bit. So now I've got the tail tied in, and you can see the butt color here just underneath that tail is going to have that violet color. Now I'm going to take some Nature Spirit purple dyed turkey biots. I'm going to be using them on this thinner side here for this size 14. And I've already got them pulled out and soaking in some water. By soaking them in the water, it's going to make them less brittle. And I'm just going to find the ridge of this biot, and I want the ridge to be facing the bottom of the hook shank when I tie this in. So I'm just going to secure that in here at the tail. Now I'm just going to wrap it forward, trim that out. And I make this body go almost all the way up into my post. I'm going to cover some of it up with dubbing, but that just ensures a nice smooth body. I'm going to create a little bit of a taper with my thread by wrapping rearward and forward and then do that a couple different times, and that's just going to create a nice taper to my body. I'm just going to take and whip finish this here behind that post so I can use my rotary and set my thread off here to the side. You probably can't see, but I'm using a Stonefoe Elite bobbin. It's a disc drag bobbin. This is my favorite bobbin to use. Gives me great thread control. And I'm just going to start wrapping this and using my rotary feature, and you can just see the nice ribs that I'm getting on this. Okay, so I'm going to wrap that all the way up into that post. Now I'm just going to secure that down. And we'll trim that out. Okay. My favorite hackle for this pattern is Whiting's Dark Barred Ginger. You can use a grizzly and a brown. You can use any. You can even use dun. I've used the dun color on this before and had great success. So get my tie-in point. Now I want the shiny side of the hackle facing me, okay, and I want to tie this in so that when I wrap this hackle, the shiny side of the hackle faces downward. I think I need a little more bare stem. So I'm just going to take and secure that hackle down there. Hold that up and wrap this hackle up that post to where that thread is. I'll just secure that down. Now I'm going to use Semperfli's kapok dubbing in purple. This is just about ready to hit the market, and I was fortunate enough, my friend gave me a sample, and I love the kapok dubbing. It holds and helps to float the fly. So I'm just gonna put this on here. It's a super fine dubbing, so you can see I'm getting a nice tight dubbing noodle or rope on here. Okay, I'm just going to start that, and you can use your rotary or wrap it without. I like to use my rotary as much as possible. I do some crisscross from front to back and back to front, and that just makes sure I cover all of that underbody there. Okay, now I'm just going to take and I can bend that down so I can start wrapping my thread or my hackle. Now I'm just going to do wraps, working my way down that post You don't want a ton of space up that. And I'm just going to wrap it right down into the dubbing. Now I'm just going to take my thread and I'm going to go in between the hackle and my stem. Now I'm going to trim out that stem. Okay. Now I'm going to take a little bit of super glue. Okay. I'm using Loctite with a little brush on it. And I'm just going to put a small amount of super glue on that thread. Now I'm just going to take and wrap that thread around that post and snip it off. Okay, you can see it's super clean because I don't have to whip finish that fly on that post, so I get a cleaner, much cleaner fly. You can see how clean. You can see that hackle looks amazing there underneath. This fly is going to float nice and perfect in that surface film. It's going to create a good profile for a mayfly. It's very, very killer in the smaller sizes. This works great for a midge hatch. You can fish this pattern for all kinds of things. So again, you can see the slightly different little color there just underneath. I really like that, to be honest, just because it adds a little bit to the fly, a little bit of definition, and that violet color is actually almost very UV in the light spectrum. So again, make sure and like your favorite video, leave us a comment, ask us a question, or just say hello. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to receive future notifications, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future, and you have a wonderful evening.